just kidding.
Yes.
Hello there, my name is Juan Ramos, and today I will be reading Randy's speech. Her claim was that capital punishment is ineffective. She defines capital punishment as seeking the death penalty is in a criminal trial, as well as ineffective as the death penalty is unable to deter crime. Her first secondary claim was that the death penalty is expensive, and the second point was that the death penalty is ineffective at deterring crime. Moving on to her first secondary claim, which was that the death penalty is ineffective. She gave us information regarding how much money is used for a person on death row. Can be undermining to the claim because she did not state where the information is coming from, as well as the information regarding how much money we need to keep someone in prison. In prison a year is diminishing because it's only talking about the prisoner in consideration, but everything else as well. By that I mean, like, she only explained we need this amount of money for the inmate, but never explains that there is more just than the inmate itself for that money. She, in an article named Annual Cost Per Inmate is $168,000, study published in August 2013 in the New York Times, states that the inmate to staff ratio hovers around 2 prisoners for every guard. This meaning that there's about 6,000 plus officers, because there is roughly about 12,287 inmates currently in jail in New York. So there's 6,000 officers who, like, she never mentioned that were accounted for the total cost of the prison. So the money to guard the prisoner was also part of the money, which was never stated. During her secondary claim, she also goes off into a tangent saying that it makes those who administrate the injection to become murderers. But that has no relevance to the secondary claim of cost or how expensive the death penalty is, as well as she does not address whether she got this information once again. If it was not the case to give this information under this claim, then that was unclear. Moving on to her secondary claim, which was that the death penalty isn't effective at deterring crime. During her speech, she gives us information regarding a small survey given in 2008 to police officers about what tools are best used to deter crime, and the officers replied themselves. This information diminishes the claim because of the bias of cops have on themselves, that they believe that they can deter anything or any crime given to at any point. Because at the end of the day, they benefit from the rewards, not someone else, because they're obviously cops. Durandi mentioned that murder rates are declining in states, but does not ever give. Rates are declining in states that do not use the death penalty, but never gives us further information to back up that statement. We are never informed of what were the rates before the death penalty and after. So overall, her first secondary claim was that the death penalty is ineffective, is expensive, and her secondary claim was that the death penalty is ineffective at deterring crime, and this is not, I believe it was unclear because of the lack of information. Thank you.
There's only 12,000, isn't it?
That's what she said.
Well, what?
Wasn't there? Yeah.
12 what?
12,000? I don't think that's right. I don't know. I'll check right now.
The camera's still
Is the
rolling.
camera still rolling?
The camera's still rolling.
I think there's 12,000 inmates at the same time.
That may be what it's talking about. Because it was New York, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, hang on a second. You go ahead and sit down.
Bring in your battery.
Per year.
12,000 per year.
The average about 12,230.
All right, the good things that you've done, you've identified what the proposition is and what the secondary claims are, and I think you did a good job starting and identifying those points. When you get to the first point, your challenge on her evidence is that there's not really a source for the cost. That's a reasonable press. I don't know that it does much to diminish that argument. There's no doubt that there is some cost. So then the question becomes, is that cost excessive? Has it been exaggerated in some way? I wasn't quite sure how your point with the cost per inmate helps very much. It sounds like it's substantially more. You mentioned that there are 2 guards for every prisoner, at least in New York, that's going on. And so that sounds like it's pretty darn expensive. One of the things that might be argued here is that does that cost diminish if they are in the general population instead of on death row, if they just have life imprisonment rather than the death penalty. You could argue that there's a lack of clarity about what the evidence that the advocate is citing is talking about. Where do those costs come from? If you're in essence saying that those are fixed costs and they wouldn't change anyway, then I see that your argument is valid on this particular point. But if you are simply saying that, well, it's really damn expensive to keep prisoners, or that there is some benefit to the money that we spend and therefore we shouldn't be reducing it, well, that's a different argument, and that's kind of a disadvantage argument and probably not appropriate for this particular assignment. The argument where you challenge the premise that she has that those who administer the death penalty become murderers, I think you have the exact right argument on this. That's a value claim that's not relevant to the issue at hand. It doesn't address whether or not it's costly. It doesn't address whether or not it's effective. It deals with a completely separate issue. And, there's really, just no reasoning on that particular point. There might be a lot of other ways that you could answer that argument with comparisons and other analogies, but your argument is to kind of dismiss it and say that it's not relevant. On the question of effectiveness, you have an okay press on the one piece of evidence that the advocate cited. I think you should point out that that was the only information that was cited, and then you've got a challenge on, big surprise, police officers say the things that are most effective at fighting crime, more police officers, and they don't list the death penalty at the top of the list, they list more police officers. Okay, I can see why that survey might be biased in that particular case. What you miss an opportunity to do is show any possible effectiveness of the death penalty. There are bucket loads of studies that talk about deterrence issues. There's plenty of contradictory stuff on this. The advocate didn't present any other evidence on this particular point. If you had some information that showed that there is a deterrent effect, you would be in much better shape, and your position would not only contradict their position, but it would do so in a way that was better quantified than anything that the advocate presented. And I think that that's the way you want to build an argument like that. You don't just, kind of push back on the issue. A little pushback's okay, but you need something a little more substantial than that. I think I've said this a couple of times to other people's arguments, and I'm not sure, if I'm repeating myself or not. A lot of your argument sounds like something that you could have said immediately after she finished speaking. In other words, you didn't need 2 weeks to get ready to say what you said. You needed 30 seconds to get ready to say what you said and get up and answer it, which is good. I mean, I'm glad that you made those arguments because you're going to need to be able to do that in the debates. But you also should be able to find information that would help you respond to those arguments more effectively and with greater depth. And that's the thing I think is kind of missing from your position here. All right, thank you.